Before we begin, here's how to earn continuing professional education credit for attending this session. Gain valuable insights by attending the podcast, then complete the assessment test to download your certificate. To do this, follow these simple steps. Click on the link in your description to access the session. Create a free account and attend the podcast. After the podcast, take the assessment test and download your certificate. It's easy, and it's free. We highly recommend checking out our subscription.
Also mentioned there are some challenges. You talked about lots of option there and reviewing applicants and the mistakes they are making. What are the challenges? What are the primary challenges do you see that people can face or organization are facing while implementing AI in the recruitment practices?
Yeah, so I think it's the mistakes, right? So
Mm.
all you need is one mistake, and now you have a lawsuit. The legal system hasn't fully caught up with AI, though it's slowly getting better. So if somebody gets overlooked for a position, who's accountable? Is it the group who's paying for the AI? Is it the company that developed the AI? Is it the person who's supposed to be assisting? So that's one of the reasons why people want it to be assistive, be a assisting technology, because somebody who works for that organization who's using the AI is supposed to be the one accountable. They do not want the AI companies to be accountable. If you follow any of the new news, there's a lot of really funny blunders that AI does. So you can Google it. There's a lot of information out there. So AI, given 10 problems, it knocks 9 of them out of the park, and on the 10th one, it was like, where did this come from?
Mhm.
Completely off base, completely wrong, that anybody should have been able to catch, kind of thing. So I think, with AI still at its early stages for a lot of these use cases, I think it's going to take a lot of time maturing to learn through it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our today's podcast on the future of recruitment, AI's impact and challenges. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Dr. Matt Raup. Dr. Matt Raup is an adjunct professor of Penn State University and the Chief of Business Intelligence at Tobyhanna Army Depot. In his role with Penn State, he teaches a class entitled Facilitating Organization Development and Change through Technology. This class explores technology like artificial intelligence and what organization develop plays with implementation and effective management of new technology. In his role with Tobyhanna Army Depot, he manages a team, is responsible for data analytics and using technology to improve business process and automation. He has almost 20 years of experience working in the IT industry and using his PhD in workforce education to closely work with human resource and other workforce related initiatives. So, with no further ado, let's welcome Dr. Matt Raup.
Hello.
Thank you. Thank you, Meta, for joining us. We do have some questions for you, and we're really excited to learn more from you about the AI's impact and challenges. Knowing your expertise, it will be a great learning session for us. So let's start with the question, very generic question about AI. Can you describe how AI is being currently used in recruitment process and the primary benefits of AI?
Yeah, so I've worked in the IT industry for almost 20 years. Whenever people would want to do something, they would come, I'd be somebody they would talk to say, this is something we're trying to accomplish. What do you think? Um, and so I'm just very comfortable in this realm. And as AI has come and become more popular, I find myself asking, what are people trying to accomplish? And then seeing a lot of terminology that maybe doesn't align with what my experience with that has been. So, for example, AI is not new. AI kind of algorithms have existed, what I mean, for a long time. AI had in 2016, 2017, it was really hitting it off until they ran into some major blunders, and then it kind of went quiet for a little bit. So, AI, when you log into your cell phone with your looking at your face, that's AI. So AI, the term AI, can be used in so many different ways, and so many of these technologies have been used for years and years, but people don't associate it with AI. So I think AI, by definition, is being used a lot more than what people think it is, because of all those technologies that people are doing. And then I also think that what people are trying to accomplish with AI is already being done with some advanced algorithms or with some processes. For example, one of the things that I've seen a lot of recruitment companies say is that, the AI is going to scan millions of resumes to find the right candidate for you. So it's constantly scanning resumes and it's constantly finding, what you want. And people have been using word filters and different things to say, okay, I'm looking for somebody with 20 years of experience in this key technology who has a bachelor's degree. So you go in and you put filter, filter, filter. Here's 50 candidates that match your stuff. Now, could AI be matching it down lower than that? You know what I mean? Like, that's a possibility, but there's so much that can be done already through, technologies that have existed for years, that um some of the ways that they're explaining that it's being used, I'm not really seeing as much benefit for. Um, where I do see a lot of potential is more of the big data analysis, and some of the self-learning, as long as the data is there. But I think that's some of the part that people keep forgetting, is that the data needs to be there, for it to exist, whether it to be training, and then there needs to be some kind of feedback loop if you're going to do machine learning. So not all AI incorporates machine learning, and I think people sometimes assume that it does, that it's learning, that it's getting better. Again, that requires some kind of feedback loop with that. So I just think there's a lot of misconceptions out there. I think AI is being used much more than what people say it is, but I think people are using it as a marketing term to sound fresh, to sound new, to get people excited. Also, some people want to make sure they're saying it so they don't fall behind. So if there's one company that says we're using AI to scan our resumes, another company doesn't use that terminology, everybody's going to say, well, that one uses AI, so that must be better, that's newer, that's more advanced, that's what I want to do. So I'm seeing really big marketing game out there, with the different companies who all want to make sure that they're not falling behind. So they're using terminology, they're saying things that, may be true to a small degree, but not to, the extent that it's being blown out of proportion, I think.
Very interesting. So you're saying AI is basically will save a lot of time, and will utilize data that already exist. So is it like AI complement human decision making in HR, but not replacing the human resource function from the organization?
So right now, all AI, nobody's going to say they're replacing human anything. So again, 2016, 2017, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, all of the major players had headline news for major issues related to AI. So whether it was AI bias, so Amazon, their recruitment thing, they actually had it where if you were a female, it gave you a lower score to be hired. And they looked into it and researched it, and there was actually data reasons on why that happened. But as soon as that came out, who wants to use AI when it says AI is biased against females? Like, so they stopped and said, don't worry, we're not having AI make the decisions. We are reviewing every single applicant. We are reviewing all the stuff to make sure that's not happening. So don't worry. So, what if something like that happens again, right? So if all of a sudden a leak gets out where people were overlooked unfairly because the AI did something that wasn't quite predicted that it would do, all of a sudden you're right back in the beginning of having to review everything manually. So no company wants that responsibility. So all of the vendors are going to say this is assistive technology. So it's going to help you to become more effective. So if you have 100 resumes to review, it might prioritize them in the order that it thinks are best. So you're still supposed to review them all, but it's going to prioritize them, which might help make your job faster. It can also point out keywords, so here's points of this one that you might like, or it can group them for you. Here, we grouped these resumes because they're strong in this skill set. We grouped these ones because they have this. So there's a lot of options out there that I think it will make your life easier. So my own experience with that right now, for example, is Microsoft has a product called Copilot. And so Copilot isn't going to write code automatically for you where it starts, finish, done, and no developer. But what Copilot does is you tell it in natural language what you need it to do, and it'll write the code for that so you can test it and verify if that's what you wanted it to do. So instead of having to research syntax or memorize that, or if you have an employee who knows what the app is supposed to do but doesn't know coding that much, now that person's able to potentially code when they wouldn't have been able to do that before. So you're seeing a lot of these technologies claiming to be assistive technologies to help people work smarter, more efficiently, but nobody is going to advertise right now human replacement. Just like I was saying at the beginning, that a lot of this is marketing. It is bad PR to say that it's going to replace humans right now. Nobody wants to do it. So I think, even though the long-term goal for a lot of organizations, realistically, it's to reduce cost. You don't want to pay for AI technologies and pay for people. Maybe right out the beginning, if people are more efficient, you don't need as many people. So instead of 10 people to do a job, you can get away with 5 with AI because they're still reviewing everything, but they're doing it more effectively with that. So I think that is the ultimate goal for a lot of different positions. But to start off with, that is not the marketing PR thing that anybody's advertising.
Oh, well, that's great. And also, you also mentioned there are some challenges. You talked about lots of option there and reviewing applicants and the mistakes they are making. What are the challenges? What are the primary challenges do you see that people can face, our organization are facing while implementing AI in the recruitment practices?
Yeah, so I think it's the mistakes, right? So
Mm.
all you need is one mistake, and now you have a lawsuit. The legal system hasn't fully caught up with AI, though it's slowly getting better. So if somebody gets overlooked for a position, who's accountable? Is it the group who's paying for the AI? Is it the company that developed the AI? Is it the person who's supposed to be assisting? So that's one of the reasons why people want it to be assistive, or be a assisting technology, because somebody who works for that organization who's using the AI is supposed to be the one accountable. They do not want the AI companies to be accountable. If you follow any of the new news, there's a lot of really funny blunders that AI does. So you can Google it. There's a lot of information out there. So AI, given 10 problems, it knocks 9 of them out of the park, and on the 10th one, it was like, where did this come from?
Mhm.
Completely off base, completely wrong, that anybody should have been able to catch, kind of thing. So I think, with AI still at its early stages for a lot of these use cases, I think it's going to take a lot of time maturing to learn through it. Um, but I think you do run a risk, depending on how much you trust it and how much you rely on it doing something um, very opposite of what you want it to be doing. So some of that is because of the data that it was trained with. Some of that is because of the algorithms that are being used. A lot of AI has part of its training is where you're supposed to tell it yes or no. Like, this is my recommendation. Was this good or bad? That was a good recommendation. Okay, good. I'll learn and I'll keep making more like that. Or this was a bad recommendation. I know I'll try to do less like that. So it's just going to take time, but if people get too aggressive, I'm sure we're going to see some news articles out there of how AI did something pretty bad. So
Do you want to earn CPE credit? Take this course of MyCPE to earn free credit. Click the link in the description to get started.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And as you said, very few people understand, and it's really great to hear someone who is an IT expert and also knows about the HR operations. You can really see the real picture, whereas people like us, we're really an HR expert, but we don't know the machine learning system. We don't know how algorithm works as well. And that's where I think the confusion comes into play. Like, we don't see the mistakes that might happen from there. And also, as I was doing some research, I came to know, like, New York City Council, they passed a bill that you have to do the audit to the third party when you're using their functions. Otherwise, there's like $500 to $1,500 fine. Those kind of go aligns with what you said. There has to be someone to take the accountability.
now, one of the things, so there was a podcast where Bill Gates was being interviewed, and they basically asked him about some of this AI stuff and how it could be used for evil. You know what I mean? So he's a big philanthropist. Can't say that word. And so they said, well, this is good that it's doing all these good things, but how can it do? What about the bad stuff? And he basically said that he's an IT geek, so kind of like myself. So I'm not a great communicator. I don't have the best presentation skills sometimes. I'm a geek. And so he was saying, he's a geek and somebody needs to be responsible for taking the technology that he's creating and making sure what use cases it can be used for, make sure that it's checking ethics and looking for biases and whatnot. So I actually teach a class for Penn State with IT in organization development, so IT and OD. And that's a lot of stuff that we talk about as a class, is that you have your HR professional, you have your IT professional, and they don't talk the same language. So they're saying, I need you to review these resumes. They're creating the algorithms, the technology to do that, and then say, here you go. And they said, okay, they made it for me. They sold it for me. I told them what I needed. It must be good. I really think that having that third party being involved, and from my perspective, an OD professional is somebody that has a lot of those skills, to do that. So look through the technology, so get to know that side a little bit, know the business, know the organization, what they need, who tests, who validates, who trains. So sometimes training isn't just how to use the tool, it's how you should use the tool. And that includes, like I said, some of the things with ethics and biases, and what are things they should be looking for, and what are some of the potential issues that occur if it's not used correctly. Like, who's looking ahead to think what those could be, to even let people know that's things they should be testing for or looking for. So that, I think, is I really enjoy that class, and I encourage all my students and whatnot to learn both sides a little bit. You don't have to be experts in both, but how do you make those connections and have the extra set of eyes to ensure everything's being done correctly?
Excellent, excellent. The organization, as we implement different new functions, even we heard about artificial intelligence is being implementing for Video Interview Act. And Illinois just published the Act for Intelligent Video Interview Act. Those kind of things. We want to get some government support, but at the same time, in your organization, as an IT expert, people must come to you as an HR expert, or as they use AI for their HR job functions. What do you tell them? What should be done, and what kind of actions they should take to mitigate the bias?
Yep. So what I always tell people is, and maybe this is that I've worked with organizations that maybe aren't as mature yet, but they're looking to use AI, but they're not using the tools they already have effectively, right? So how many people are looking at your data today? You know what I mean? So do you have dashboards that you're looking at your data? Are you doing predictive analytics? Those are not things that you need AI or a fancy new tool to do. Those are things that people should be doing automatically today. And data is a key part of AI working. So if you can't be using those tools effectively today, what makes you think that AI is going to be any better? So when people come to me saying I need AI because that's going to fix all my problems, the first thing I do is ask them what their current environment looks like today and what are their processes and what are they doing. And through that practice, we're usually able to identify a lot of efficiencies, um, just talking through that or looking at their tools and say, hey, we didn't even realize we had access to this tool to visualize our dashboards, or we didn't realize that this tool had this feature so Tableau, Power BI, a lot of these data analytic tools, they have a lot of predictive analysis built into them that you click a few buttons and next thing you know you're looking at it. But people aren't looking at that today. They're looking for AI to be their answer to their problems because people are understaffed, they're overworked, they have low engagement, organizational change. You have all the stuff going on with people and their non-work life. You know what I mean? You had COVID, you had everybody coming back and trying to get into that. You have the remote versus on-site versus hybrid work environments. There's so many challenges. I think that when people ask me for AI, what they're telling me is, I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, I need something to look forward to, I need hope. Tell me hope, Matt. So this is going to make my life easier, right? So, like I said, I do try to give them some hope by saying, hey, look, let's look what you have today, and we can make what you have today a little bit better. But I also try to help them think outside the box and not just look at AI for answers. So, for example, we're talking about AI in recruitment, like, oh, well, it can look through millions of resumes and it's going to make all these recommendations. And, for the interviews, it can interview and, interview thousands of people, and it's going to let the top ranked interviews because it can tell when they're lying, and it can tell when they're nervous, and it can tell when they're confident, and all of this automatic stuff. That's awesome. But one of the things that we're looking at the organization that I work for is, we're an Army depot, and a lot of our workforce is coming from active duty military. So instead of an AI where we're looking at millions of resumes across the world, we're starting to target military staff that are looking to retire. So, hey, you've served in the active military for 20 years, you're at retirement age. Instead of retiring and then going complete private sector, or retiring and not doing any work, which most of them, when they retire after 20 years, a lot of times they're looking for another position. But we're saying, what MOS did you have? So what work did you do in the Army? How does that correlate to the work that we need? And so now we're advertising and marketing in a way that says, as you're starting to, getting ready to retire, consider us as a potential employment so you can go straight from active duty to working for us. The onboarding is easier. The terminology is already there. A lot of the processes and the skill sets are the same. They just, people didn't know it exists. So that is something that we're pretty excited for that could transform the way we recruit. And that has nothing to do with AI at this point. Is there a way that AI could be involved to identify which active duty, military are the best to target? Maybe, you know what I mean? So I'm not saying that there's no chance, but what I'm saying is if you're stressed today and you're looking for answers, don't rely on AI to be your answer. Be creative, be personable. You know what I mean? So AI is something that everybody has access to that doesn't necessarily give you a competitive advantage over people. Whereas we're an army depot, so we have a competitive advantage over private sector. Is hey, you served in the army, we are army, we serve the soldier. Why don't you continue that mission and work for us? So that connects with people in a way that only using AI to solve your problems is not going to.
Great, great. So let's talk about the measurements that you have in place or you see in the organization or in the government and place to ensure the AI tools and the things that we talked about and the cybersecurity and the biasness. What are the tools that are available for HR recruitment so that they do not perpetuate bias against certain groups or people?
Yep. So there's a lot of tools out there that people can use to develop their own AI. So Microsoft has some, Amazon has some. There's a number of things out there where you can develop your own AI application, your own AI algorithm from scratch. However, that's very challenging. You basically you should either want to build on something that's out there already, or leverage a tool that already has it built in. So, for really large organizations, maybe having your own AI tool built that you build from scratch is a good investment for you. Um, but for most organizations, I don't think that's the case. I saw some kind of stat. I can't remember off the top of my head where I saw it, but they said something about like only 15% of AI ideas and initiatives succeed. So that means people have an idea of something that AI could be done for. So they spend all this money and resources to do it, only to find out it's either not technically possible, it doesn't do what they thought it would do, the investment to get it working doesn't match. There's cyber issues, there's data privacy issues, whatever the case may be. So, working in IT, I've seen a lot of people have ideas that didn't really go anywhere. I still encourage people to do them because it's still building a better awareness and it's still building skill set. So it doesn't mean it's wrong, but I don't think it's necessarily always the right investment depending on the organization. So what I were to do if I were an organization who wanted to do more with AI is work with a vendor that has AI involved in their tools. So, again, we used LinkedIn. If you go through and look LinkedIn hiring recruitment, they're using AI. Indeed, Workday. A lot of these major carriers, they're all going to have AI involved, and so that would be how I would dip your toe in that. However, because it's involved and it's now a part of their tool, it's not like a second plugin that you have to buy. A lot of times it is now a normal part of their tool. It doesn't feel like you're using AI and it doesn't have that big fuzzy feeling of we're doing something, really new and crazy and innovative. So I think that that's what people have to kind of just reset their expectations of what they're going to get from AI, what AI implementation looks like, work with a vendor that's leveraging some of those tools and work that way. And then the rest of your resources, I would spend, doing something innovative outside of AI, right? So what are different ways that you can market yourselves? We're looking for more technical skills, more coding skills, data skills. And so a lot of our staff who have been there for years don't have them. So we have to find those skills and bring them in. Well, what about these people who have been there for a long time, who are passionate about what they do, who already work there, who know the business? And so I'll refer back to what I was talking earlier about with Copilot. So they may not be a developer, but they know what the business needs. And now Copilot is a way for them to create an application with less training than it would take to become a full out coder or developer. And so I think that there's other ways beyond recruitment and finding talent on the outside that you can spend some of your efforts on. And like I said, some of those use AI, whether it be for training and for development, assistive technologies that help people learn something faster or help them do the work that they do. So I don't think there's one right answer. I think you need to diversify. I think you need to look at all possible options and take advantage of all the different things there, because there's no magic thing that's going to make it all better.
Awesome. Before we move into the employee development and career progression training that you have mentioned, from the discussion that we have done so far, is it AI and the alternative of AI is being organized, or automation and machine learning, and all those terms have a different meaning, which often interpreted as a function of AI.
Access latest and trending CPE courses with my CPE One Unlimited Access subscription. Subscribe now.
Different people, when they say AI, they mean different things. So the most common use of AI right now today, I would say there's probably two. One is generative AI. So
Mhm.
the Chat GPT, that is what everybody is crazy about, and that's generative AI. So you can tell it something that you want it to do, and it creates it for you. Um, so when I was preparing for this, I told I was using Google's AI, um, and I said, write me a resume for a GS-13 position at Toby Hanna Army Depot in Pennsylvania, that is specialized in data management and artificial intelligence. And it wrote a beautiful resume. And not only about AI, but it incorporated all the terminology that's used in the federal government. It even displayed it a little bit in a way that the government looks for when it's doing resumes. It doesn't know me and it doesn't know my skill sets, but it wrote what an ideal resume would look like based on a bunch of other resumes that are out there, or maybe it's using job postings. So here's a job posting, and so that's what's powerful about AI, is that it can look at tons and tons and tons of data and give you some perspective based on that data. So if I were applying to a bunch of positions, I may use that as a starting point. And so that generative AI, like I said, is really what people are kind of thinking about. So when you're doing more of the recruitment, how does generative AI help with recruitment? So maybe there's ways that I'm not really aware of. I see more of the predictive analysis with recruitment, some of those other things. And then machine learning is also something that I think people don't always understand. So anytime people say, oh, AI, it's going to take over the world, like they're waiting for the Terminator, and stuff. So that's where the AI learns on its own. Like that's, they're thinking of the machine learning, which not all AI, does machine learning. That it runs into an issue, it self-corrects, and now in the future, it doesn't run into that issue anymore. So that's awesome, but that requires a lot of work. Like that just can't happen automatically. So we'll use the example of recruitment. What does that feedback loop look like that tells the AI that it was successful? So I think probably right now, the only thing that's telling it it's successful is whether the person was hired or not, right? So, here's 1,000 resumes. I reviewed them all. Here's the top 3. Okay, which one did you check? Oh, that's the one you chose? Okay, that's what a good resume looks like. That's a successful person. That's what a successful employee looks like. From now on, I'm going to filter all my resumes based on your selection that you just did there. So obviously, people who have hired, I've hired people in my life. Not every decision was a good decision. Like you sometimes know day one, you sometimes don't know until after the first year. It takes time. So for the AI really to be machine learning in a way that's effective and saying, yep, I'm getting better and I'm getting better, it needs to know how those people worked out. It needs to know their production. It needs to know their performance. Well, how is it going to know their performance? How many supervisors are listening to this? And do you know what your performance standards are? Do you review your performance standards with your supervisor? Are you held accountable? Do you have metrics that you're supposed to follow, KPIs, all of those things? How do you know that you're being successful at your job? You know what I mean? And yes, that exists. But if people answered honestly, a lot of times that gets overlooked. And so we don't even know if we're being successful at our own jobs. So how do we know that the employee we just hired is a high performer? And if we don't know if that employee we hired is a high performer, then how does the AI know that it selected the best candidate?
Right.
It doesn't. So that's the kind of thought process that I think it's going to take a lot of time for it to mature. Because say Workday, for example, it has the recruitment and retention, and it's learning that way. Well, now it's going to start looking at the development, and that data is going to all be talked into it and say, what certifications does people have? What does they score on their yearly rating? How long do they stay with the organization? It's going to start taking in all that extra data. And once that starts occurring, now you're in a better position to start having true machine learning because you see the progress from start to finish. And that feedback loop can start occurring to say, okay, once you hired this person, they worked for the organization for the next 10 years, and they were identified as a high performer every single year. So that was a good selection. So I think it'll come in time. My pessimism isn't mean that it's not possible or that it's not going to happen. My pessimism is based on I'm getting asked questions today, Matt, we're struggling, we're on fire. How is this going to make my life better? And again, I revert everybody back to say, don't look at AI to save you. There's a lot that you can do today. So again, performance management. If you're not, managing your staff very well, that's something that could be done today to say, what are our standards? Are people meeting those standards? Do we have times to review those, and how are we improving there? Because when you have that process and you start incorporating that data, that's going to help you in the future when the AI is ready for that part of it.
Those are some great information. But if we look into the career development side, improving employee development and career progression planning, how do you see AI can play a role in that?
If AI makes hiring people a lot easier, then do you care about developing your people as much? I mean, I do. Like that's my leadership style. But I don't think you can start talking about how much you should invest in developing your staff without having your hiring strategy fully figured out. So if you're going to allow fully remote work and you're going to use AI to identify, all your best candidates, then how much effort does it take to identify and hire somebody to come in? And if your workload is highly documented and everything like that you don't have to onboard people the same way you did in years past. So I remember when I first got onboarded at Penn State, where's the bathroom? Where's the cafeteria? Where do I park? Those are things that you don't have to worry about anymore. Again, I'm not a fan of that style. I think it does need to be considered and talked about though, because how much money it takes to turn somebody, give them skills that they've never had. And once they have those skills, are they loyal to you because they didn't have the skill sets to go other places? And now that you've given them those skill sets, are they going to leave? It's a back and forth between, individuals and organizations about, how much you should invest in people and whatnot, especially as the process is so much easier to to hire and onboard at times. But ultimately, I think developing people is a good strategy. It helps your current people. It makes you more people are going to want to work for you if they know that you invest in your people. So I think it's an excellent strategy to invest in people, but I just think it's a conversation that needs to be had. Some of the AI technologies that are out there, you have AI that's mixed with VR, so virtual reality. So I've seen a lot of development and training opportunities for people using VR, and then AI can mix into it. So that way it's giving you real world situations that are changing. So that generative AI, give me a scenario where this can happen. Okay, it's a new scenario every single time because it's being generated by AI, and it's going to help you, learn better on the fly there. So I could see generative AI, VR options for employee development. AI through the assistive technologies, I think it can help you improve as well. So, for example, one of the things that I do is if I'm working on something and I want to get somebody else's opinion, but there's nobody around, like because I'm working late at night or something, I'll go into AI and I'll tell me, make a case against using AI for HR recruitment. And so you could tape that in there, give it all the details. So you want to give it a little bit more guidelines. So how many words do you want it? What industry do you want it? The more specific you are, the better output you're going to get. But the AI is going to give me an argument against why to use AI in there because I'm trying to give myself a different perspective. So now I can read that and say, okay, that's something I hadn't really considered before. So good. I'm glad that I have that perspective. So when people know how to use AI for even things like that, that's really going to help them develop in their own positions because now they have an extra set of eyes. They have somebody to bounce ideas off of just to get some different perspectives. So that's another example that I think people can use.
Great. Is there any emerging trend that you see, like any specific functions that you have seen people are using AI for recruitment, placement, succession planning, or even training and development? We have done the simulation, but without the AI part, and we see it's really beneficial to give a scenario and ask employees to answer how they would respond to the specific scenario. And as you said, AI can add individual situation and maybe it will be more adaptive to this employees. But is there any real day function that is being used in current times?
So the biggest trend that I'm seeing right now when it comes to AI and employee development is probably predicting what skill sets that you're going to need. So, for example, if you're a shop that creates tires and all of a sudden, there's a national, a disaster that happens across the world, well, how's that going to impact, the demand on the tires that you need? Well, if they're going to be sending help, they're going to be sending this, demand's going to go up. So instead of waiting until you can't meet that demand to say, we're going to go out and recruit more people, or we need to go build the skill set, you're using predictive and analytics, and some of those can be AI assisted. So because you're using data from all over, it's funny where even the economy can impact the how many tires you're going to need. Okay, so interest rates are going down. That means people are going to buy more cars. People are going to buy more cars. They're going to need more tires. They need more tires. You're going to need to produce more tires. Once you see that trend that starts, it's a domino effect. So if you know to start upscaling and developing a few months in advance, you're going to be at a huge competitive advantage than other people. And so I think that is the biggest trend that I'm seeing right now is how do you know what skills you need to develop, and when, how many of those skills do you need? Because if you're going to go that route where you don't want to keep on hiring and firing people or bringing people on and bringing people, letting people go based on what skills you need, that means you're creating an environment where you're helping your employees to adapt to whatever skills are needed. So the more time, the better to say, okay, we're seeing that this is going to be an uptick. we predict we're going to need 30 of these people. We only have 20. Okay, we're predicting this is going to be downsizing. So let's take these 10 people and we're going to start training them for this, because we know in 3 months from now, we're going to need 30 instead of 20. And over here, we're going to need less people because that's going down. That would be a really valuable use of AI that would get you ahead of the game when it comes to developing your staff. Because otherwise, if it says, okay, we need this right now, your options are outsourcing, bringing in contractors who already have the skill sets. So, you have less options when you're reactive versus proactive.
Great. Another concern that comes often when we get those decision, like those predictive analysis, major concern is like where AI is getting those data from. What if it's all wrong? Who's to accountable for? And if those decisions are not right, how do we go back and check where it went wrong?
Yep. So one of the things that I think people lose track of, but I think is really important is what is the confidence rate of the data?
Mhm.
So the more you predict, the more you pull data from other places, the less confident it can be. But if it also gives you way ahead of other people, right? So, if you wait until the very last minute, your data is going to be up to date. So, you look at your weather. If you're looking at weather for next week, how many times is it wrong? It's, wrong a lot, you know what I mean? Because a lot can happen. If you want, excellent and never to be wrong, you can just say, what's the weather right now? It's raining. All right. So you're confident. So I think there has to be some acceptance of risk when it comes to having data that's incorrect. So you can always try to do your best to make the best that it can be. But if you say, okay, we were wrong, therefore this is bad and this is not good, then you don't really have any place being in there. So I think there's acceptance of risk that's inherently there. Now, there is some type of risk that you shouldn't accept, and that's when it comes to like data privacy, data security, breaches, and stuff like that. So I think it is important to know where your data is coming from. I think it's important, very important, to protect your data. So you don't want to put your head in the sand and say, where does this come and where does it go? I don't know, not my problem. You should have some understanding with that. If you're using data from the tools, so like I said, LinkedIn, they have a lot of data that they own. Indeed, they have a lot of data. So they might, be able to say, yep, here's the trends that we're seeing of job postings for this particular skill set. So they can tell when a skill set is being in higher demand because they start to see more jobs with it. Well, that might help you be predictive, but it's not very predictive because now you already have the jobs being posted. So looking at the industry, looking at the world, it's complicated, but it's worth doing. So I think that's just one of those things that as an organization, you can start talking through, you can start looking at and figure out which things make sense for you. And something that we haven't talked about yet is cost.
Yeah.
So I had an interesting conversation with somebody where they were saying, we could have AI that's on this truck, and when an engine starts to go bad, it makes a different sound, and so AI can be really sensitive to the sound, and it can start predicting when engines are starting to fail and everything like that. Well, they started getting into this, and between the hardware, the software development, all this kind of stuff, how much money you're looking at. And it was a lot of money. And when you looked at it, compared the data, so the failure on engines was not very high at all if you had a proactive replacement thing, right? So the average life of an engine should be 150,000 miles. So at 150,000, we're going to replace it no matter what, because the data suggests that once you get past 150,000, the failure rate goes way high. That data exists today. So would you want to spend millions of dollars in a tool that would start to predict that says, okay, it's 155,000. Oh, 170,000, your return on investment for that may not be very good. Now, if it's a safety thing, so using it in the military to say this is going bad, well, if it fails when they're on a mission, that could be life or death. So there may be times where the return on investment is different than monetary. There's still a place for it, but I think that when people are considering AI, they need to look at the current alternatives and what is the ROI that they'll be getting if they have that AI versus what they're able to do today. And right now I manage a data analytics team, and people are blown away by some of the stuff we're able to predict just through simple data analytics. And so you can accomplish some of the things that people are looking to do with AI just by percentages and numbers. So that's a component that I would encourage people to look at. That what are your alternatives, and what ROI would you be looking at?
That's perfect. We don't have much time left for this podcast. I do have one more question, which I feel like really important, is the succession planning. The HR function, a lot of owners, family business, they're struggling with the succession planning in organization. And from your perspective, is AI has anything to do with succession planning, or is there any support from AI that people can derive when they do the succession planning for the organization?
I think succession planning is one of those tough things that people don't do very well today. A lot of times it's because it doesn't get prioritized as it should with some things. So I think with AI, one of the benefits that you have for certain positions is that if you have experts that can help train the AI, and they're part of the data training models. Their data is being used when training. They're validating it. So we talked earlier about, did this work? Yes or no? Yes. How was this? Good. Yes or no? So when you have experts that are training that data, when somebody comes in who doesn't have the same skill set, but the tool's already kind of been developed and trained by experts, I think it is easier for you to have those next people step into it. So I don't think that's all you want to rely on, but I don't see too many other places, at least top of my head, that I would see as obvious, AI use cases with succession planning. But when you have somebody there who knows what they're doing, having them help train the data, make sure the data is there, looks through and does things, that it is setting the foundation for the future that other people can step in. And now that assistive technology is already kind of at a much higher level than it would have been with somebody that was less experienced.
Great. Dr. Matt, we're almost out of time, but do you have any last thing that you want to mention to my audience that I forgot to ask?
So I think, in general, I want people to be excited. I hope people don't go away from this and say, okay, there's no hope. He said AI is not the answer. I hope what this does is give people more hope and empowers people, that says you don't have to sit around and wait for AI to come make your life better. There's things that you can be doing today that can improve. And those things that you do today are going to help AI be implemented more effectively in the future, because you're going to have more data, you're going to have better data, you're going to have a better understanding of what you need the AI to do. I'd encourage people never to forget the person. So AI, the people side of it is probably a reason that many HR professionals got into it to begin with. You want to help people, you want to work with people. So if AI is the interface that's doing everything, you may kind of lose what your passion has been. So I think assistive technologies, I think, are going to help maybe take some of the repetitive tasks off your plate and give you more time to spend with people. And so as you work through what AI thinks you should be doing, what is the right tools, how do you implement it, what time frames, what's the cost, all of these things, I think, just looking at it holistically is going to help you be more effective. And then, as I mentioned, OD professionals, that's something that we're helping OD professionals learn, in my class. How do they become that middleman that helps connect the business and HR professional with the technology? So the IT person doesn't can't rely them on to know what's going on and know all the ethics and stuff. And the person using the tool, you have needs and you know how it needs to be used, but you don't know all that stuff. So bringing in that third party to come and help make sure that nothing's being missed, I think will be important to ensure you don't end up the headlines of some news article for, doing something that you didn't really anticipate happening.
Great, great perspective, great feedback. Thank you, Dr. Matt, for joining us today. We had the opportunity to learn a lot of new things. I really appreciate you sharing all those ideas with us. Thank you.
Access latest and trending CPE courses with my CPE One Unlimited Access subscription. Subscribe now.